All right, so I'm on this I think it's a 2000 Lexus Rx300 today. Came in running real bad. Obvious misfire, and I ran the codes on it. Ran the misfire, cylinder 1, 2, and 3, misfire detected. And then we got a bunch of evap codes in here, and I talked to the guy that owns it. He said, well, the check engine light's been on since I've owned it, and so that's probably the evap code. Those have been in there. I haven't checked it out. It's probably could be a purge solenoid. I don't really know. But what he's real concerned about is the misfire. Barely runs. He was actually in Florida when this happened, and he drove all the way back from Florida, which on these Lexus and a lot of these cars, these misfires that get stored permanently, the check engine light will actually flash. And when it does that, it's wanting you to get it fixed, because what will happen is it'll actually foul out your catalytic converter. So I did a little check on it, and 1, 2, and 3 are misfiring, and I think it keeps bringing up number 2. See, in the history it's got 1, 2, 3, but then it brings up 2 is pending, and then 1, 2, 3 are current. That 2 cylinder is what I'm concerned about, because it keeps popping up repeatedly. I know it says 1 and 2 are also misfiring, but a lot of times these computers they see a misfire and they'll try to back off the fuel tables and run them lean to prevent the catalytic converter from fouling out. So I think that's what's going on here. So anyway, I actually pulled the number 2 plug out, which is number 2 on the Toyotas or Lexus. And it was black, and there was a little bit of fuel on it. And anyway, so I got this spark checker, a little cheap spark checker, in here on I guess it'll be number 4. And we're going to fire it up, and I'll show you what a good coil looks like. And then we'll test the second coil, and we'll see what that looks like. All right, so that's number 4 right there. You can see the spark. And we can bring it out a little bit with our test light. So that's the number 4, firing. Now we'll check the one that I suspect is bad, and we'll see what that does. All right, so this is number 2, and just as I suspected, no spark coming out of there at all. Nothing. So what we'll do next is check to make sure we're even getting electric to that coil. And if we're getting electric to that coil, then we know that the coil is just dead itself. So we'll check that next and make sure it's even getting electric to it. All right, so I'm back probed into the power all the time on the coil here, and we'll just, with the key on, you can see that it has power going to the coil. Then you have the 2 computer wires and the ground all the time. So that's kind of a low-tech way to check this. You can put a scope on these 2 wires and see what the signal looks like. But other than that, that's pretty much the low-tech. The next step you could do is switch the coils over and see if the misfire moves to a different cylinder. Being that this thing is dead the way it is, I think it's pretty safe to call it the coil's bad on this. So our next step will be we'll pull that plug out again and take a look at it, and go from there on that. Alright, so we got 2, 4, 6. You can see 4 and 6 are real clean, and then this is number 2, the one that was misfiring. It's brown and fouled. I don't know if the camera's picking up, but the very top of it actually has unburnt fuel on it. So I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but this is obviously not firing. Alright, so I got the back 3 out. This is 1, 3, and 5. And you can see here, they're all burning pretty clean. Nothing's fouled. I'm not going to lie to you. Getting those back plugs out, there's several ways you can do it. Some people take the upper intake manifold off. Some people take this cowl area off. What I do usually is, on these Toyotas, you take the throttle bracket off here, and you can kind of get your hand back in here, and on this side I pull the PCV hose. You get your hand in that way. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there won't be a lot of cussing and frustration involved, no matter what you do. I really hate, Toyota uses Phillips screws for a lot of things. I don't know why they do that. Like, if you can see, like right here, that's Phillips screws on there. You know, those aren't going to come off without a big pain, a major pain. They use Phillips screws on that side. So I don't like disturbing that stuff if I don't have to, because those things strip out. They're just, I don't know, I don't understand why Toyota did that, or does that. So, anyway, this isn't a bash on Toyota, they're good cars, but, you know, getting to those back plugs, I think it's pretty much all the same. A Lexus, Toyota, anything with this 3.0 in it, you're going to have a fight getting those out. So, I think my original, anyway, back to the plugs. They're all, they're burning clean. There's no fouling, there's no fuel on them. So I think my original theory was right as far as, you know, the scan tool said 1, 2, and 3 is misfiring. Well, that's 1, 2, and then 3 would be the middle one back there. What's the chances of you having 3 bad coil packs, you know, on a car? It's probably pretty slim, especially on these coil over where there's just, each plug has its own coil pack. I doubt you're going to have 3 at one time. So the next thing to do, you know, use your scan tool. If you didn't have a scan tool, you'd have to pull all the plugs out and see which one's foul or which one's wet and try to look for something like that. The scan tool came up and it had the 1, 2, 3 as a permanent code, and it had 1, 2, 3 as a pending, or as a history code, and it had number 2 as a pending code. So it was really, the scan tool was telling me in 3 different places cylinder 2 was having a problem. So that's the one I went to right off the bat, which is this one. And like I said, when you have a constant misfire like that, your check engine light will flash, and the computer starts trying to pull fuel back to prevent your catalytic converter from fouling out. So you may get other misfires, but you know, if you got a scan tool, look and see which one's coming up the most. So we will go get a coil for it. And yesterday I didn't mention either, you know, instead of scoping those computer wires, you could always switch the bad one over to here and see if it's firing off. Then you would know, you know, if the computer, I guess those 2 wires. But anyway, it's, you know, I'm 99.9% sure it's that coil. It's got power going to it, and it's just not firing off. And the plug, all the things that lead you to believe that the plug is wet and fouled. So we're going to go get a coil and put all new plugs in it, and we'll clear the codes and put this mess back together. And I actually lost one of my little extensions down there in the back. One of these. I hate that too. It's one of my favorite extensions. Hopefully I can fish it out. I don't know where it went. You know, you can't see when you got your arms in there. You can't see what you're doing. It's all by feel back there. And of course, one of them fell and it didn't hit the ground, so it's in the chassis somewhere. So we'll have to fish that out before I forget. And then we'll get this back together and give it a whirl. We'll clear the codes, and I'm sure the evap codes will come back regardless, because that's my guess. He said the check engine light's been on since he's owned it, and my guess is those evap codes are what caused that, because obviously it was running. The car ran great, you know, before he went to Florida. So the misfire is the main thing, and the evap codes. I'm not sure if I'll look at that or what he wants me to do, but you know, the main focus today on this would be to work on getting the misfire out and getting it running right again. So we'll go get a coil and some plugs, put them all in, and we'll fire this thing up and see what we got. All right, one thing about this Toyota I'll add also, you know, you want to make sure you gap your plugs when you put them in. I know this is basic stuff, but I actually had 2. These plugs are almost $9 a piece. They are $9 a piece. They're $8.99 a piece. And 2 of them, you know, the ground strap was almost touching the electrode. So always make sure you check your gap. You know, nowadays they're usually pretty good about coming pre-gapped, but if they get dropped or whatever, this can close up. So you want to gap these out, and this car is 44 thousandths. And then the other thing, it's an old school trick, but I got just a rubber hose here on the end of the spark plug, and that's what I use to drop it down into the cylinder. If you have a good spark plug socket, they have that little round foam in there to hold it. Mine's had fallen out, so I just went back to this old school trick until I could get a new piece of foam for mine or whatever. But you don't want to just drop those down in the cylinder, because if you don't get it just right, like I said, you can close this ground strap up on here and close the gap, and then it won't run right. So you just you know, it doesn't take much. You just drop it down in there easy in the middle, and usually a few turns, and then you can. Got these landscapers working out here, causing a racket. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but sorry if you do. I'm going to set the camera down for a second. Alright, so you just screw it in a couple turns, and then, you know, this will pull right out. So that's just a trick. You don't want to just, like I say, you don't want to drop those down there and bust the electrode or close it up, the ground strap. So I got all the plugs started. Next step, I'm just going to do the back first, get the hard, tedious crap out of the way. Tighten the plugs down, and then put all the coil packs together, and then put the front. And like I said before, we'll clear the codes and start it up. Alright, so we got it all back together, and you can see it's running pretty good. So, no misfires. We'll go ahead and clear the codes out of it and take it for a ride. Before, it was popping real bad and, you know, obvious misfires. So, anyway, look at the Autel. I left my Autel on last night. It's dead, so I'm hoping it's charged enough to hook back up to this thing, and we'll clear the codes and take it for a little test drive. Kind of close this thing out here. Just a little side note here. You can see the check engine light's still on because I haven't cleared the codes, but it's no longer flashing. So I'm just going to, like I said, boot the Autel up. Sometimes it takes a while to find these Lexus, seems like. So I'll get it booted up, and then we'll go back out. Alright, so I took this out for about 15-20 minutes. You can see here the cylinder misfire counter is a 0. The long term and the short term fuel trims look pretty good on it. Especially for, you know, I didn't clear the computer or anything. So everything looks pretty good on it. I got a feeling, you know, the check engine light's still off. But I didn't do anything with the evap system, so I'm sure that'll pop back up. And it's got a small exhaust leak in the front somewhere. And I asked him if it was there before this all started happening. He didn't know. So I guess we'll check that out and see what's up. But as far as the misfire and all that, that's all fixed now, I believe. Because this thing was not intermittent at all. It was just, you know, that coil was done. So check engine light was flashing, all that good stuff. And so anyway, that's all fixed. And like I said, it's just basic test. You know, if you have a multiple cylinder misfire, don't assume all those cylinders are actually misfiring. It could just be one. And the other thing I would say is that those plugs were, you know, if the coils were going, the reason why I went, you know, number 2 at first, obviously, is because it came up multiple times in my scan tool in the Autel here. And the other thing, too, also is, you know, you pull the plug out and it's wet. Now, if that plug was dry, then maybe you look at the fuel injector or like an intake leak or something like that. You know, a lean misfire. But the fact that the plug was wet, that leads you to believe right then and there that you have like a ignition problem. So those are just, like I said, those are just the basic tests you can do. So yeah, this car is pretty much done. Like I said, he's not picking the car up till Thursday or Friday, so if I get time, I may look at the evap system, probably drive a little bit here and there, and see if that code, because I don't even remember, figure out which codes they were, and maybe take a look at it, maybe do a smoke test, or whatever we have to do to take a look at it, if we get time. Otherwise, this Hoopties ready to go back home.